A true agent of change, Sufyan Sohel has spent the past 12 years as the Deputy Director and General Counsel for CAIR-Chicago, one of the largest Muslim civil rights advocacy organizations in the nation. He's also a Cook County Human Rights Commissioner, serves on the boards of numerous nonprofits, is a current member of the Economic Club of Chicago, a fellow with both Leadership Greater Chicago and the Egyptian Center for Women's Rights. Oh yeah, he's also the host of CAN TV's new signature program, Change Agents. Please join me and the servant leader who couldn't possibly be getting enough sleep, Sufyan Sohel, in the arena right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
This week on Change Agents. This week on Change Agents, this week's Change Agent. We will meet some incredible activists working to combat hate faced by the Muslim American community.
Brother Sufyan, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, my friend. I've been looking forward to this conversation. No matter how I look at your life, it is an interesting one, and it is still just maybe chapter 2 of a complete book, maybe the second quarter of a complete book.
Maybe.
Okay, fair enough. Let's begin at the beginning. You were born at Alexian Hospital on June 10th, 1982.
Correct.
Huh, okay. Tell me about the woman and man who created you.
My mother and father, immigrants from India, came in the mid to late 70s. My dad came first. He's a pharmacist from India. The United States at that point was looking for scientists, physicians, medical professionals. Immigration Naturalization Act from the late 60s, where a lot of Asians and others started immigrating to the United States. He had a sister here, and they brought him over. But then he found a job, went around from New York to Chicago, lived with his sister here, and then his mom said, it's time for you to get married. So he went back.
He returned to India.
He returned to India. My mother, the story he shares is his mother showed him 3 pictures. He picked my mom's, and they got married. He came back, and then a couple months later, through the citizenship immigration process, she followed him over here.
Wow, wow. You're a middle child.
I am the middle child.
You have a sister who's 2 years up and a brother who's 12 years down.
Correct.
Okay. What was life like for young Sufyan in Elk Grove Village, Illinois?
It was Bloomingdale, Illinois. The hospital was in Elk Grove Village. It was great. I was the youngest child for 12 years, so I have a lot of youngest child syndrome. I was, some could argue, a crybaby at times.
No.
I looked up to my sister, wanted her to be my best friend. She wanted nothing to do with me growing up, of course. But then when I was in 6th grade, my parents shared that Mom's expecting. And I was 12, my sister was 14. We had this brand new baby.
Were you excited?
I was really excited. We were really, really excited. We both loved children, and it was neat because we had this brand new plaything in the house, and we adore him. The hardest part was when my parents would start sending us to parent-teacher conferences, and people would think that we were his parent rather than his elder siblings because just of the large age gap between us.
Sure. Is it fair to say that you grew up in a home where the expectation of high achievement was paramount and pervasive?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hard work, good grades, those were values instilled in us very early on. My dad always gave the mantra, do tomorrow's work today, today's work now. Meaning don't put off things, like get your shit done. I think I'd mentioned to you before that anything less than A was not tolerated in the house. I remember even
I think
once,
during our pre-interview when you told me that, the shock that I felt, because we could slip in with C- in my home. But.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I got a B once in PE class, and I sat down on the grass outside my house just because I was so...
You felt the weight of that?
I felt the weight of it, and it was not a fear, it was more I disappointed my parents.
It just worse.
Yeah, and my mom opened the door, she's like, come on inside. But it's, looking back, they just wanted to succeed in life, right? And it was work hard, do as best as you can so that you can build those healthy habits in college and beyond and things like that.
And as wonderful as that is, there's always a flip side to most things. I would suspect that failure for you was not something that you embraced as we do nowadays and go, failure can be your friend. Growing up, failure for you, if a B was not an option, failure was probably something that you couldn't even imagine. What was that? What was the feeling, the thought of failing? What did that make you feel?
It was not even an option.
Mm-hmm.
I was prone to get nicks and bumps on the car we drove, and we would get it fixed right away. It was like be so perfect so we can avoid failure, but because of that, we didn't learn how to properly fail. And I feel sometimes your adolescent years are the times to learn how to fail, so you learn how to pick yourself up. So as an adult and a young adult, when I had initial big failures, I really didn't know how to process those.
It is a muscle.
Yeah, and I think I reacted to them very poorly then at that point.
And let's move forward. In 2000,
2000.
I was well into my career. You were graduating high school. Potato, potato. You graduated from Lake Park.
Mm-hmm.
You have since earned a law degree from DePaul, a master's in finance from DePaul's Driehaus College of Business, a certificate in diversity and inclusion from Cornell. All correct?
Correct.
Okay. But I want to spend a bit of time at the very start of your college experience as an undergraduate at Tulane. Talk about what the transition was from hometown in your parents' home, a very structured, it feels like, environment, to moving to New Orleans and having the freedom that comes with that. Were there growing pains of any kind?
I wouldn't call them growing pains. So I came from a home where, my parents made sure I succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
I was probably just as involved and engaged in my community and school life as I am now in my adult life. And but I was able to find that balance. School was always the first priority, and then I was encouraged to do other things, but get those grades, focus on those grades. And school always came relatively easy to me. But then when I went to college, I thought I didn't remember how much work I had to put in for school to become easy for me, and I took it all for granted. So my grades suffered. I suffered many academic issues. I was kicked out of school and later allowed back in after Hurricane Katrina.
You were kicked out of school.
I was kicked out of school,
Okay,
yes.
so, okay.
It was a plagiarism charge. I resubmitted a paper I had submitted earlier.
You plagiarized yourself.
Yeah, it was not original
Okay,
work for the
okay.
class, which I totally understand
Sure.
and appreciate the value of academic integrity. But I'm grateful because when Hurricane Katrina hit in New Orleans back in 2005, I had reached out to school administration, just applaud them on the great work they did, and they decided that, they were given a new opportunity, let's give others a new opportunity too. So they changed it, they allowed me back in to
wonderful
repeat
is
my
that?
last semester at college.
How many, all told, how many years did you spend in undergrad at Tulane?
I spent 6 years in New Orleans, but only not as all of that was in school.
Okay. But a little bit more than 4.
Yes.
Okay.
A couple extra laps, I like to say.
So, and I always look for themes in these conversations because they exist. And I just, in the open, read what is an impressive, and I ended with, you have a law degree from DePaul, but that Tulane experience could have undermined it all. But a failure, because for you, that was a failure. I just want to take a little bit of time on that. Not really having that muscle by the time you got to college, and you went big. You said, if I'm going to learn how to fail and pick myself back up, that's a substantial thing. I can imagine. What was it like telling your parents that you were expelled from Tulane?
Not easy. And I think it was a reality that they didn't quite understand either. And I could see the hurt in their eyes and their voices. And this wasn't the son that they raised. And then when the opportunity came, but at the same time, they gave me nothing but love. We were thinking about what other options that we could explore educationally, professionally. But then when the option came to return back to school and finish up, they were very encouraging of it, and they wanted me to finish and supported me the whole way.
Nice, very nice. So, did that make it? Did it change your relationship with quote unquote failing? Did it change your relationship with? It won't be. It will hurt. It can be difficult, but sometimes falling or a mistake is a breathtakingly wonderful opportunity to grow and learn. Did that settle in, or did you just go, "Thank goodness we got through this"?
More the latter. For me, when I was going through it, I went through all those different stages of like denial. This cannot be happening to me. Something like this would never happen to me. And I hid it from myself, most importantly, but then from others, my friends, my family, and all that stuff. And I kind of am just grateful that God and the world gave me a second chance to fix it. And that taught me that when these sorts of things and failures do happen, you do need to lean on others. You need to get the help. Like mental health services would have been so helpful for me to help navigate that time. I was, 20, 21, 22 years old. Still thought I knew everything, right? But I didn't know anything. And leaning on my family, leaning on my friends, that could have helped me process it and go through it more rather than denial and finding unhealthy ways to deal with it.
And your younger brother, the two of you lived together while he attended undergrad and then med school, right? Was it bosom buddies, the odd couple? What was that relationship like at that time, and what is it now?
So it's interesting because I moved down to New Orleans when he was 6 years old.
Oh.
And I moved back when he was 12. So there was this whole, I would come home summers, but as a 20-some-year-old, the last thing I want to do is really hang out with a 6 and 12-year-old.
You've now become your sister.
Yeah, right? But I loved him, and he looked up so much to me. And as we do with older siblings sometimes, and because I was also this mystical figure to him who he doesn't get to be around all this time and hears about more often than spends time with.
Sure.
And then I lived at home for about a year and a half, and then I moved to the city to start law school. So it wasn't until, so we really never got time to spend with each other. So when he was 18, he got into the UIC's 8-year medical program. And my dad suggested, why don't you both live together in the city? My lease had up, so we bought a place together, and it was great because it gave us an opportunity to get to know each other all over again as men, and realizing our differences. He, at that point, was a lot more observant of our faith than I was. He was in college. I was, running a nonprofit organization, and days he would be at home, I would be out at networking events, and while he was at school studying, I'd be
living together with two ships passing in the night.
Yeah, at times, but we would try to be intentional about creating time together. We still bond over, Marvel and superhero movies and books and food.
But go on.
You're missing out on a lot.
I know.
And,
yes.
We can talk about that
Sure
too.
thing.
But we both love food, and it's that intentional time of that we would have to make to spend time and get to know each other.
The desire to even want to.
Yeah, but when that desire is still there. So now he moved to Detroit after he got married in 2019, and every year we'll do just a brothers, a little getaway. We'll rent a house up on Lake Michigan somewhere, and him and his wife come back frequently to visit. So we'll do dinner at my parents' house or just dinner, the three of us, and now as he's in his doing residency, we are continuing to strengthen our relationship, and I love him to death.
I'm going to take a step back before we move forward. How often do you see your parents presently?
I talk to my mother every single day, and I try to go visit every weekend. And it was great during the pandemic because for a long time we were each other's bubbles.
Yes.
So at least once a week. But now, the one bad thing, according to, I would say my parents would argue now that the world is opening up and more social events are happening, it's, I try still every week, once a time. Sometimes it's every other week.
Okay, fair enough. Talk to me about how you found your way to one of your current roles. As Deputy Director and General Counsel at CAIR, How do you find your way there 12 years ago? 12 years ago?
13.
Just under 13?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you find your way there, and what has inspired you about that work?
So after college, when I moved back, I was studying to be I was working at an investment firm wanting to be a stockbroker. So I was in that process of studying for my Series 63 and Series 7, and but after a while, I could feel my heart wasn't in it. It was just trying to help rich people get richer, more or less, and those are the clientele we were pursuing. At the same time, I saw my eyes were opened, especially after Hurricane Katrina, where I had the opportunity to work with a lot of communities who were suffering after the storm, those who had access to rebuild their homes much easier than those who did not, predominantly white versus black communities. And it kind of ignited something in me. And then when I moved back home, I saw a lot of disparities between faith and culture, patriarchal systems, classism, sexism, racism, and it really just started getting me angry. So I was actually
So you were on your way to make more money for people who already had money.
and become rich myself doing that.
Sure.
Because as we know, nonprofits pay a whole lot of money, and
They pay with love.
they
Stop
pay
it.
with love.
Yes.
And but we don't do it just for that love, right? We
Absolutely.
do it to make the world a better place. And my first initial goal was to become a chaplain in the military. I found faith again at that age, and wanted to go and be there as I've always been the mother figure type, like the consoler, the confidant, and I wanted to be there for those serving in our military, especially those of my Islamic faith. And my dad was like, no.
No, that's just a flat no.
That's a no.
Okay, good. Okay.
So then I thought about it some more, and I'm like, there's so many issues facing people here and abroad. So I went to law school with the plan of being an international human rights attorney, working to advocate for and protect the rights of women and other vulnerable communities, specifically in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa.
Sure.
Chicago is not that place to work on those things. You have to be in Europe or DC. And I got connected to CAIR-Chicago during my second year of law school, and they said, check it out. And since 2009, I'm still there.
Okay. And since since September 15th of this year, when it was the season premiere of Change Agents right here on CAN TV, of which you are the host, that played a very integral role in designing that program. Why did you embrace the Herculean task of launching a new program like Change Agents, and what do you hope to accomplish over what we hope is a very long run for that show? See how I did that?
I did. Very long run. I believe at my core, what gets me going every single day is that we all have the ability to make a positive change in the world and the communities around us, and that can look so very differently for each and every one of us. Do we volunteer at a food bank? Do we roll up our sleeves and work for a nonprofit, get paid with love, and do good in that way? Do we speak up, stand up when there's reproductive rights marches and actions happening? But we all can do something, we all should do something. And I remember talking to you about the original signature programming that's going on there. And while we were talking, what clicked to me was news and media always highlights the bad. I had the news on at home today, and it was just like, young student at Princeton found dead, and this, and all these things. And no one's talking about all the good that's being done. And then in speaking to a lot of my peers, whether they be attorneys or people in my friend and family circles, outside of certain spheres, like their religious institutions, or sending money back home, or to one or two really feel-good causes, no one's giving, no one's really doing any good or giving back to those doing good. So I thought, why not create something that we can highlight the good being done in our cities and our communities, and bring on these change agents every week to share some of their work.
Yeah. And you know this because I'm sure you see my social media. Me and my boys, and by boys I mean my Frenchie, Charlie Brown, and my Havanese, Juju Bean. We watch that show We watch it consistently. It is
Thank
a
you.
part of our culture. But I will say, and I've talked to you, I've sent you notes. There have been moments in there, and I'm someone who considers myself to be engaged and active, but it's the humanization that your show does so well for me, and that it begins at the macro, the issue, expertise, folks being affected, but then that final segment for me, and I've told you, is my favorite, change in action, where it's that human who's doing something amazing. I want to do two things. It struck me as you were speaking, and I've had this conversation, there are silver linings in everything if you are willing to see them. For me, there have been silver linings in the dual pandemics, sitting here in this space. I couldn't imagine. Katrina was silver linings for you. It got you back into something that seemed impossible once they say you're out. And it also opened you up to paying it forward, and it seems that that was where you changed who you were at the core of your being. So I just wanted to focus on that because I think in the darkest times, there are silver linings, that those are inflection points that do have the power to change. I know that in addition to everything we've just talked about, all that you do, you're a magician?
So a couple of years ago, I was out with some friends, and there was a young man standing in the bar, and he started doing card tricks.
Okay.
And I've always loved magic. Like, I'd always have my parents buy me those little magic sets
Yes.
that you can get, and so I was drawn to him. I was like, "Where'd you learn how to do this? What are you doing?" And he said he volunteers with this organization called Open Heart Magic. So up until the pandemic, I was going every Tuesday, to do magic at an area children's hospital, just for the sick kids that were in the hospital.
I tell you what we're about to do, because our incredible team are telling me move us forward to our next segment. You and I talk a lot. It has been, in addition to all the other things that you are a member of the board of CAN TV, one of my bosses, and like everyone on the board, you have been so kind and generous. And when I ask, you answer. So we will continue these conversations, but we will come back, and Sufyan and I are going to participate in the final segment, a little something we like to call 3 for the road. And what we're also going to do is run through it quickly, because I want to see some magic. I just do. We'll be right back. Brother Sufyan, we're going to do something called 3 for the road. Here's how it goes. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You're going to give me 3 answers. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's begin. First question. If you could have dinner with anyone living or dead, who would it be and why?
Great question.
Thank you.
I would probably say, as a person of the Islamic faith, I would pick our Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. He came in and more or less revolutionized the world at that point, and now his followers are, everywhere from Latin America to Indonesia, the fastest growing religion in the world, second largest, and he came in a time when facing huge adversity, lots of loss in his life, from his parents to his first wife to many, many followers, and just where he found that strength to keep on fighting in the face of adversity. It's just a model for me always, is as we talked about, and as I fail and as I continue to fail, to remember that it will get better and there's always hope, and you just got to keep on moving forward.
That was a good start. We're off to a good start. Ready for question 2?
Absolutely.
Do you have any regrets?
No. I wouldn't be the man I am today if it wasn't for everything that's happened before, the good and the bad. And we have to learn from the bad and lean on to the good, and hopefully makes us stronger and better at what we do.
Final question. One piece of advice present-day Sufyan would give to his 21-year-old self?
Take school a little bit more seriously. You can't go back, and I think sometimes we forget the importance of getting good grades and working hard and building those skill sets, and because you can't go back and repeat some of that stuff. So you put in that time and effort, and My dad used to always say, like, work hard now and play later. And we get so eager to play now, especially at those ages, and then have to work harder throughout our life. And if I held on to that a little bit, I wouldn't have had as many of the challenges, which I'm grateful for where I am now. But who knows, like, what other opportunities may have come my way and opened up for me.
Fair enough. Those are the 3 questions, 3 for the road. Thank you. Now I want some magic.
Okay.
Show me a trick. I want magic.
I did bring my cards.
All right,
for
here we
you.
go.
So this is one, and it's one I do for the kids.
Okay.
It's called the first trick I ever learned. So it's not a trick deck, not a trick deck, not a trick deck.
Okay.
And I'm gonna.
I don't know how I would know the difference, but I
I would
take
give
your
it to you
word.
for 52 to count. but-
Okay. No, thank you.
So pick any card that you want.
Okay.
So the first trick I ever learned, the story I tell is I went to a carnival. There was an old man with a magician. He said, "Do you want to see a trick?" And I said, "Yes." So he asked me to come pick a card. I'm going to close my eyes. You can show the audience. You can show, and just let me know when you stop showing.
I'm done.
All right. So after I grabbed the card, he asked me to put it back in. So tell me when to stop.
Okay. Stop.
Put the card right back there.
Okay.
Perfect. And then he asked me to shuffle it. So what I did was I shuffled, I shuffled, I shuffled, I shuffled, I shuffled, I shuffled. He's like, "No, you're not really doing a good
Right.
job." So he said, like, mix it up. So I just started putting cards down like this, and he kept shaking his hand, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He's like, "Just mix them up." I said, "All right, let me mix them up." So I took some cards like this, some cards like this, some cards like this. Sorry. Some cards like this, 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 and some cards like this, and he handed it back to him. And his eyes got all big, just like yours, right? Because there's some cards which are front to back, there's some cards which are back to front, and there's even some cards which are back to back.
Okay.
So then he gave me his magic wand, pretending I'm giving you,
Okay.
and told me to tap on the deck 3 times.
Can this be the magic one?
Absolutely. Say your favorite magic word.
Abracadabra.
And what happened was all the cards turned the same direction, right? He asked me to tap on it again. Say your favorite magic word again.
Abracadabra.
And what happened is something really neat. One of the
I'm like a
cards
5-year-old. Oh my goodness, you
turned
did
right
it.
side up, and it was my card.
Oh, that's crazy. That's wow. The reaction I just had.
So imagine you're a kid in the
gosh,
hospital
yes.
who's sick, and
Yeah.
so that's the intention that we try to go
Yeah.
do, is just bring a little joy back into their lives, do a little good for them, and
I've
cheer
said
them
it
up a little
before, I'll say it again. One, it's a privilege to sit in this chair and have conversations with incredible human beings like you. And I think at this dash moment in our lives, conversation and someone like you who I deeply respect, that you are fearless of sharing what some had saw as a failure, but really it was part of the trajectory that got you to where you are right now. So I thank you for this. We will continue working together. I'll continue watching Change Agents. Thank you again, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Chicago and beyond, for tuning in. I'm going to leave you with a final thought for the road, courtesy of Helen Keller. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do the something that I can do. Until next time, take good care of you and each other. Good night. Oh, I need my...
Thank you all for joining me.
To you, sir. Thank
Great
you for
question.
sharing. That was a great conversation. Thank you.